Hi, this is Trisha Wolfrey of Your Empowered Self. It's been a long time since I've seen you, hasn't it? And that's because I haven't really found content that I thought was useful to share. But today I've got something really, really interesting that I think affects nearly everybody, social media. And social media can have a positive impact on stress, but it can really have a negative impact as well. So today I'm in conversation with Susan Tomlinson, who's a coach specializing in working with women business owners. And she's had an experience recently where she had to look at her use of social media and address that in quite a meaningful way. So I thought it'd be really nice for her to share with you how she found it was a problem and what she did about it. Something we can all benefit from, I'm sure. But first of all, I'm going to ask Susan what it is that stresses her out on a day-to-day basis. Susan.
Hi, Trisha. It's lovely to be in conversation with you. Thank you for this invitation to talk about social media. In terms of what stresses me out, I think that not having enough time, feeling like I'm rushing. I live in the countryside and it always feels like I'm last minute jumping in the car to drive off somewhere, and then it's rush, rush, rush. And I hate to feel like that.
Yeah.
And I think that actually relates to my what turned into a bit of a bad habit with social media.
Yeah. Because that really consumes so much time, doesn't it? You can really kind of get lost in it.
So yes, it's typical going down the rabbit hole. I think, oh, I'll just check on something. And then, 15 minutes, half an hour later, just realize the time goes so quickly because you get diverted or distracted by something on social media, or you're responding to something. So I was really aware when I got into this time-wasting habit of looking at social media and scrolling without any purpose or intention, that it was making me feel very rushed throughout the day, because I was thinking I was leaving everything to the last minute, and then it was kind of like panic getting into the car or getting on a Zoom call, and it was just stressing me out. Yeah, so that's a good question. Thank you.
All right, so the day-to-day one leads into the actual subject matter as well. I think time, not having enough time is what everybody can identify with, but really we all have the same amount of time, don't we? So it's less to do with not having enough and more to do with how we choose to spend the time, what we give priority to. And I think what's happened with social media is that it is kind of overtaken, not literally overtaken our minds, but it feels as though sometimes that it's, there's a loss of control about its usage. So let's look at then how you, when you got into social media, what was the purpose of it and how you noticed it evolved?
Yes, well, years and years ago when social media came on the scene, and I was absolutely unsure about even going on Facebook. I just thought, wow, I'm such a private person. I don't want people to see me in such a public arena, but for my own business, I realized that I needed to be there and show up. And it struck me at that time, this was many years ago, right at the beginning, that it seemed like everybody was doing so much on social media. And I often wondered, how do they have the time to do that? So I never really got into it to that extent. But I think with lockdown, I had more time and I was at home more, and I didn't really have much structure to my day. So I got into and it also, I think social media was becoming more something that people were using in order to grow their businesses. So I felt like I always like to do something and try it out and experiment so that I can help my own clients. There's no point me actually sharing strategies or approaches to doing business if I haven't actually done it myself. And I noticed during lockdown there were lots of great Insta Lives, so I was signing up for those. And I also did a photography course, which was amazing. I love photography. And one of the tips was to actually look at other people's photography, get some ideas, inspiration. And so I used that as an excuse to start scrolling.
Was it because that doesn't sound like an excuse. That sounds like you had a purpose, but you just found yourself, sorry about putting words in your mouth, but I just am wondering if the wording was accurate. Is it that you just found yourself scrolling because something looked interesting?
Yeah,
I think that's what happens.
it is. I mean, you know, you can go on with the idea of, I find this, you know, I can go onto the web and have an idea about something I want to do some research on. And before you know it, I'm looking at other things. And it's kind of done without consciousness.
No.
And I was finding that I was looking for creative photography ideas. Yeah, I was not doing it. It did have a purpose, but as I was doing it, I lost that intent. So it became an excuse. Oh, I'll look at social media in the morning because it'll give me some ideas. And there are some positive things about social media, as you mentioned.
So the positive aspects of social media then for you are, first of all, you're learning something you want to learn. Second of all, you're modeling something for your clients that you think, or at least testing it out. So there were two reasons for you doing it. Was there anything else that you got from it?
Oh, definitely. I've made friends. People have attended my online events because they found me on social media. I found out about programs that I've signed up for. I've been able to join private Facebook groups. So there have been lots and lots of advantages. I've certainly been able to learn through observing others on social media as well. So there is a place for it, definitely. And it's really helped me extend my audience and created more connections for me. I think where the problem is, it becomes out of balance.
Yes. Yeah. So it sounds like yours is purely business rather than social, well, although you did say you'd made friends. I think for a lot of people, so I can't remember why I got on it, but I basically, the times I get on it now are if it's somebody's birthday, or if I get a notification that somebody sent me a message, I always want to reply. Or what's the other reason? Oh, if I'm in a train from London and my brain is just shot to pieces, and I would usually read, I just scroll and it's just mindless. And I find the whole journey, which is like 30 or 40 minutes, I'm just, it's like, God, this isn't, and a lot of it isn't even interesting. But some of it is interesting, but I don't know what percentage. I haven't thought about that. So, and I think a lot of people as well use it to see what other people are doing, and they start comparing their lives with other people's. And I think this is where it becomes very, very toxic. So I work as a coach and a therapist, and a lot of people that I see, the effects of the social media on their mental health is just enormous. Because they're comparing their normal lives against other people's edited highlights. And we have to remember that what we see on social media is generally people's edited highlights, and not to take it too seriously, but people take it really seriously. So it's had a real effect on people feeling that their lives aren't as glossy as other people. They're not doing as much as other people. They're not as happy as other people. But I see some of those people that look like that, and I see that actually, no, they have their own problems. They just put on social media that they don't have any at all. So it's really, in that respect, I find it very, very toxic. But let's have a look at, so you found that you were spending far too much time. And I think one of the reasons is that we get so many, what about this and what about that, don't we? You know, little pop-ups, I think they're called. So what are the things that you've done, Susan, that have helped you to reduce the amount of time that you've spent on social media?
Well, I think the first one was awareness. So I really thought about how it's making me feel at the start, because I was doing it in the morning. I wasn't doing it during the day because I was busy with work, and then not in the evenings because I was just too tired and I didn't want to be sitting there scrolling when I could be watching a film or something, or cooking supper. So I really felt that physically and mentally, I was not starting my day well. I felt groggy, I felt foggy, and then everything was sort of like a rush to get up and get to work and all those sorts of things. So it was, first of all, it was awareness. And then I thought more about it in terms of the use of my time, because we've all got 24 hours. And when you look at successful people, I'm sure they're not scrolling. I'm sure they're not spending loads of time on social media. They've probably got people who are posting for them and responding. And I don't want to, it doesn't fit with my self-image. You know, my self-image is a successful businesswoman who is creative, productive, organized, gets out and about, and enjoys life. And this mindless scrolling on social media was not actually fitting with my self-image or my future self-image. So,
sorry, go ahead. I'm just reminded, because I'm aware that we're talking about business quite a bit, that if I can just bring it back to the personal, I went out with a friend of mine at the weekend, and it was a beautiful place, and we were in a bar, sorry folks, which was outside, an outside bar, and we enjoyed a couple of drinks. Now I take a long time drinking a drink, and next to us there was two women posing, doing selfies the whole time, and so I don't know how long it took us to drink two drinks, maybe an hour, I don't know what it was. And all they were doing the whole time was doing these selfies, I'm sure, to post on social media to say what a great time they were having in this beautiful place, when really all they were doing was finding the perfect shot to look like the great time was being had by both of them. But that's a long time that they're not actually having a good time, just trying to find the perfect shot. So, you know, when you look at the quality of, you know, if you're doing it for fun and to show people what you're doing just in your life, is that really making you happy? Or I think there's a massive addiction here. So there's an addiction to social media, but there's also an addiction to likes and follows. So I think, so I love that you said, you know, I found some programs that I joined. I've done the same thing. Some of them are really lovely and good and helpful and life enhancing. Some of them are a complete waste of time, because people think that they should be doing something like that, or they want the likes, or they want the adulation, or whatever it is. So I think there is another part of it as well, isn't there, which is, you know, living a false life. So you're talking about being authentic to the person that you want to be, but also, you know, why am I addicted to all of these likes? What is it that's missing in my life that's what I need to have? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of it is psychology.
Oh yeah.
But, you know, we all want to be validated, we want to be seen, and we want to connect, we want to be part of a community.
Yeah.
And particularly with lockdown, when we were living more isolated lives, that was a way for us to maintain that connection, which was good in a way. But it's not good when we're looking for that validation from people that most of them we don't even know.
I know. Approval from people we don't even know if we like them or not.
Exactly.
It is very, very interesting that we can get swallowed up, because the only real validation that works is how you feel about yourself inside. If you're relying on outside of you to feel good inside of you, that's a really hard way to live your life. It's just not something that's sustainable, and also creates behaviors that are conforming to a particular audience, and that audience might be different 10 minutes later, and then you're conforming to what that audience needs from you. So it's a very stressful way to live, by relying on that external validation.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So Susan, what are the things that you did then? So you said, first of all, awareness was what you needed to do. What else did you do?
Well, I think it sort of got a bit bad towards the end of the year. I don't know what the right word is, bad, but this mindless scrolling was taking up too much of my time, wasn't making me feel good.
Yeah.
And so I decided that over Christmas I would just take off all my notifications and not look at social media for about 10 days, 2 weeks. And I felt so much better. So I was really able to compare how I was feeling during that period as to how I was feeling before. And so I started the new year feeling much more productive, more creative, a lot more energy, much more vitality. And I didn't want to go back to how I was feeling before, which was this kind of fogginess and sluggishness.
So profound, isn't it? The level of difference 10 days later is quite phenomenal. I wonder, it's interesting that you did it over the Christmas period, because that's kind of there's two things about that. It's really clever because your mind is taken up with what everybody does at Christmas, but also it's kind of a false time because your mind's taken up with other things. So what am I trying to say? I think I'm trying to say, did you notice any kind of detox, and was it easier after the Christmas period, or more difficult rather, after the Christmas period was over, when you were back into the real swing of normal life?
Well, I do believe that it does take time to change a habit, and it's easy to fall into habits which aren't actually good for us. Because scrolling on social media, as you said, it kind of helps you switch off in a way, and it's a bit mindless. So you don't have to face up to doing the things you don't want to do, or think about things which make you feel uncomfortable. But I found that because I felt emotionally so much better, I didn't want to go back to how I felt before. And so I just got busy doing other things. I had this big creative burst. I felt very productive. I started going to more exercise classes. And I think taking that step back made me realize that I wasn't using social media intentionally. I wasn't using it to support me or to grow my business. It was actually just sucking a lot of energy from me.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people find, that they kind of rather than having an intent to connect with people, that they feel depleted by it, with the odd burst of like, oh, that was really good. And of course it's from a social perspective, it's not a proper connection. You don't really know the person. So I love that you replaced it with other things. If I wasn't so tired at the end of a long day with clients, and I need to just not use my brain a bit, what I prefer to do when I think about it is just put some soothing music on, because that's calming to the soul, and I can close my eyes, because often my eyes get quite sore. So looking at social media is not the most intelligent thing. But you're doing like exercise, fabulous, and taking advantage of your creative burst of energy that came from it as well. Brilliant. So you were utilizing the freedom that it gave you, and the gifts that there were gifts there, weren't there? That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Any other tips that you think might help?
I think the main one is actually replacing it with something which is more nourishing.
Yes.
So I'm really looking at what's a nourishing morning routine for me.
Yeah.
And how does that make me feel? So always for me, it goes back to how does this make me feel?
Yeah.
And also the things that came up for me are things around discipline, self-image, habits, physically. I've always been interested in health, and I've noticed that when I'm looking at my phone, of course, my neck is moving forward. So that's not good for our spines. It's also not good for posture and breathing. So we're collapsing in on ourselves, and that collapsing in is like a form of depression.
Well, it is. If you think about it, it's really hard to feel happy when you're doing that. It really is. But if you kind of do that, bring your shoulders back and your head up, it's much easier to feel positive about life. So, what you're saying is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oxygenate, get more air into our lungs.
Yeah.
So keeping those things in mind, because it's always easy to slip back into habits which don't serve us, particularly if we're going through a bad spot. It might be that I pick up my phone and think, I just don't want to have some negative thoughts, so I look at social media. I don't want to do that. It's better to actually just face up to how you're feeling and process that, or have a little meditation, or read something inspiring, or even do something which is going to take you physically outside of the way you're feeling.
Yeah. And I think people that use it for purely social reasons, if it's your way of connecting with the outside world, here's a radical thought. How about calling a friend or going to see a friend? Whilst I went on a lovely walk yesterday in nature. It's just so life affirming to see all the beautiful nature evolving through different seasons. But I think so many people don't actually see their friends as much as they could. And I'm thinking that even the quality of those connections when they do is impacted because we rely too much on social media as a means of connection.
Yes, and entertainment.
And entertainment, yeah. So what are the things, I love your line about what is nourishing. And so, what would really feed my soul right now? And if it's connection, what is a more meaningful way of connecting that really does make you feel good? Because I think sometimes we'll go into social media saying, oh, I don't feel very good. I'll just see what people are doing and that will cheer me up. Maybe, maybe not. So I think they go in with the intention, the hopeful intention of it making them feel better, but actually leaving the time on social media feeling much more depleted by it, as you were saying about the fogginess and the tiredness and negativity that people get from it as well. That's really helpful.
Yes, I love that, what you said about actually making in-person connections with people or contacting somebody. One of the things that I have done this year is actually make a list of all the places that I want to visit and all the things that I want to do.
Brilliant.
And already starting to make those arrangements. I'm going to an exhibition with a friend, meeting up for lunch in London, and that feels nourishing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. What is nourishing to the soul? What really will make me feel better? Okay, that's really helpful. Anything else? I've got another question I want to ask you, but anything else on social media that you can think of that would be helpful for people?
Yeah, I think just be aware of using it with purpose and intention.
Yeah.
So that it serves you and that you don't get lost in it. Because there are some good, as I said, there's some good things about social media. And it's really been good for me in many ways. But it's been having that awareness about how you use it and you being in control.
Yeah, actually, it brings to mind what I'm noticing with people that that they're so addicted to it that they take it to bed and they will read and scroll in the middle of the night, and then they wake up groggy because they've been scrolling through social media. And sometimes conversing, through WhatsApp or whatever, but how toxic is that when our brains and our bodies are supposed to be replenishing and they're not? I just thought of another tip as well, though. So purposeful. What is the purpose of this? I want to connect with some friends, or I want to do some research on blah, or I want to make some connections, or whatever your purpose is for that particular social media moment. But also a time limit to it. So setting a really clear intention and being true to that, but also how much time am I willing to give to this? And maybe setting a timer to make sure that you don't, because you can easily, I said, coming back from London, I can find that the whole journey is gone. And I thought, what a waste of time that was. I do not feel better for having done that. Never mind. Okay.
But at least it's time limited.
At least it's, of course, it's time limited. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. Oh, and the other thing is, where people are, their phone pings and they just feel I've got to answer it straight away. No, you don't. You really don't. So that's where people become a slave to their phone and to their social media. I love that you say that it should serve you, not the other way around. Yeah. Okay.
We could talk about this for
days.
2 hours, not 20 minutes.
We could run a whole a 2-day workshop, or we could run a retreat. We could run a detox retreat, detoxing from social media.
We need it.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I always ask my guests if they've had a book that they found inspiring or helpful in their lives. And I've asked Susan the same thing. And I think you've got one that you'd like to talk about, haven't you, Susan?
Yes, I mean, I read a lot, and yeah, the one that I wanted to talk about today was by Michael Singer,
Yeah.
and he's written a book called The Surrender Experiment, and this resonated with me because it's his story about how he bought this piece of land and wanted it for himself to live in solitude, but he attracted people and it became a community. And he decided he wanted to do this experiment, which was to surrender to life and not resist it.
Oh, I love
And
it. Yeah.
yeah, his life evolved to the extent where he was kind of living this monastic life to growing $1 billion technology company. And he said one of the things that happened was that he just allowed life to happen. And I think, certainly for me, one of the things that I found myself doing over the past few years was resisting it. You know, this is not what I want. I want something different. Why is my life like this? And what his book says is that you just allow life to unfold and you don't resist it, and you keep your eyes open for those opportunities. And life can be really magical. I know it can be difficult, but it also can be magical, and it's kind of like a shift in perception. So it's been good for me in terms of thinking about what areas am I resisting. I had a big resistance to living in the countryside, and that went on for a couple of years actually, particularly during lockdown, thinking, why am I stuck in the countryside? And
Oh.
then I decided I was going to stop resisting. I feel so much better. I really feel that things are opening up for me. It's made a huge difference to opportunities that are coming my way, all sorts of things.
I find this subject really complicated because there's a lot of factors. I love the idea of surrender and just kind of going with it and just letting life unfold. But I also believe that we are the creators of our life. So some of the clients I work with are so fearful and hold themselves back so much. And sometimes they don't do anything. So they're not letting life unfold. They're kind of shrinking into themselves. So I have to make sure that they're engaging with it, but in a relaxed way. So there's a book, I forget the name of it now. Byron Katie wrote it, Loving
Yeah.
What Is, which is about resisting reality, where people, like you said, you know, I'm in the country, why am I stuck in the country? So there's a level of resentment that you brought to the experience. But once you embraced, actually, you know, there's some good things in this, then you enjoyed it. And I think there's always, and you also mentioned, you know, difficulties in life. I do believe that there are messages in those experiences that if we were to listen to our wiser self, there would be learnings in those that help us to develop and grow, to make the most of those opportunities, or learning what to say yes to and what to say no to, and how to kind of blossom as an individual rather than conforming to a norm that society seems to want us all to do. So I love the sound of that. You did have one more, didn't you, that you just said, can I sneak an extra one in?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I've really fully embraced nature. I mean, I love nature, but when I was living in London, there wasn't much around.
Yeah.
And so I've just decided that I really want to fully understand traditions, nature, cycles of the moon, you know, all that sort of thing. So I came across a podcast by a company called Fern, which make these beautiful fragrances. And the lady who delivers the podcast is a lady called Leah Liendez. And she's written a book called The Almanac, Seasonal Almanac. And she brings it out each year, and it's month by month. And it's all sorts of really interesting things about the moon and our traditions, which some I didn't even know about, and all sorts of things about nature, pond life.
There's so much to our world, isn't there, that's not on a tiny little screen.
Exactly.
There is so much to learn. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today and being so open about it. I really appreciate that so much. I hope you've enjoyed it too. As I said, I haven't posted in a while because there hasn't been a subject that I thought was interesting enough. There's about 40 videos I've done so far, but if there's something that you would like to hear more about, or a story that you'd like to share, because you know I interview experts, but I also interview people who've gone through a lived experience, let me know. In the meantime, if you haven't liked already and subscribed, please do so, and do share as well. This might land just at the right time for somebody. Thank you.